when I fell in love with the idea of real estate. From that day, I thought I was going to get rich overnight. Didn't quite work like that. Took 16 months to complete my first deal, flipped my first house, made over $100,000 in profit.
What is up, everybody? I'm your host, Matt Drouin of the Go Big Live Real Estate Investors Podcast. Today, I am psyched out of my mind with a very special guest. I've actually been wanting to get on the show for quite some time, Mr. Austin Rutherford. And Austin is a serial entrepreneur creating multiple seven-figure companies and has been investing in real estate for almost a decade. He has completed hundreds of real estate deals, raised over $25 million of private money, and currently owns $25 million plus in his rental portfolio. His company, Elevate Life, shows others how to build wealth through real estate using other people's money. Austin is also an author, a book called Valet to Millionaire, and also Get Free Houses, which I want to get some free houses, man. So I definitely want to hear about that. So welcome to the show, Austin. I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely, brother. Looking forward to today, man.
Let's dive in. You were born and now you're here. What happened in between?
It's a 30-year gap, but my original dream, was to go to the NBA. So I grew up middle school is kind of when that started. So I did everything I could to go to the league, worked out 2-3 times a day, went to prep school after high school in Arizona. And at that point, that's kind of when I fell out of love with the game of basketball. Kind of felt, lost and uncertain of the future because that was my life. Ended up with a book in my hands called Think and Grow Rich. And it opened me up to the idea of, making money and the possibility. And then read about passive residual income, which is making money without working. We know that's not that easy, but it sounded great at the time. And that's kind of when I fell in love with the idea of real estate. So moved back to Ohio, bought a duplex when I was 20 years old. I was valeting cars at the time, going to college, taking 15 credit hours, and trying to start, this real estate thing. So bought the duplex, had 30 grand saved, put it as a down payment. Then I was broke. Then I was like, I need to make more money. So got my real estate license, sold a couple of houses, hated it, hired a mentor, pulled out new credit cards, maxed out my credit cards for $25,000 for a coaching program. From that day, I thought I was going to get rich overnight. Didn't quite work like that. It took 16 months to complete my first deal. 4 days after my 22nd birthday, flipped my first house, made over $100,000 in profit, and just reinvested literally every single penny back into the business, and have been doing it ever since.
Excellent. That's an awesome story. I want to pause a little bit on Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This isn't Austin's first rodeo with being on podcasts and that sort of thing. I heard the last time you don't even know how you wound up with a book. Like, do you remember how you wound up with the book, or it just showed up in your life?
I wish I did, because I would need to thank somebody, whoever put it in my hands. The closest thing I can think of, I had a teammate, and his dad knew somebody in commercial real estate. I ended up meeting with that gentleman once I kind of found, I guess that would be after, because I already had the itch for real estate then. So I genuinely don't know how it ended up in my hands.
That is absolutely amazing. I mean, I'll tell you how it wound up in my hands. By how it wound up in my dad's hands. My dad was helping his best childhood friend move out of his house and cleared the entire house out, went down and I don't know if you know those those rickety metal racks that people store stuff on in their basement, that sort of thing. The last thing that was left there was an old dusty book. I mean, it was all yellow and that sort of thing. It was Think and Grow Rich.
That's wild.
My dad was he worked as a general laborer at Genesee Brewery, which is in Rochester, New York, and just backbreaking labor and that sort of thing. And he was fine with that life. My mother was fine with that life. He started at 7, was home by 3, and it just something flipped on in his mind after he read that book. Now, fast forwarding to when he during my formative years, when he thought it would be appropriate time for me to read it, he introduced it to me and told me that whole story. Right? Guess what I did? I didn't read it. I was like, how can a book change your life?
Yeah.
So how the book ended up actually winding in my hands was I was in college. I was very impressionable. I was obsessed with trying to figure it out in life financially and to make it and be quote unquote rich. And I signed up with Amway, multi-level marketing company, right? And they required me to read all these books my dad told me to read. Think and Grow Rich, The Magic of Thinking Big, How to Win Friends and Influence People, all of the classics. And I just tore through those books. I was like, oh my God, why did I do this earlier on? So
that's awesome. That's a crazy story. It was the only thing left in the house. It was meant to be.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, maybe it was meant to be for you too. So let's fast forward a little bit, because I mean, you were into your first deal was a duplex. You had, kind of like done the typical, like, maybe some leapfrogging and fix and flipping and that sort of thing. In the green room, we were talking about the case study we wanted to kind of pick on and pull threads at today, and it was sort of like one of your first bigger deals you've done, and you've done bigger deals since then. Tell me about that deal.
The vast majority of my career has been in the single family space. I own like some doubles, some 4 units, some 6 units, but it's all, residential essentially. So I actually had a buddy of mine found this warehouse. It was a 16,000 square foot warehouse, and he put it under contract and couldn't raise the money to fund it. So he called me. He's like, "Hey, I got this deal. I think it's a deal. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you want to partner on it." And so I ran the numbers. I got my little spreadsheet built out, but it's for residential, right? There's a big difference between true commercial and residential, the way you run numbers. I didn't know that. So when I broke the numbers down, I ran it as a regular rental property where, let's say they pay $10,000 a month in rent, then I get the $10,000, then I pay, the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, the snow plow, the grass, all that stuff. So I ran all the numbers. I thought, it would rent for about $10,000 a month. And then I added all my expenses into it. And, when it came out, it essentially was like a base hit. It was an okay deal, just like kind of the residential that I do, base hits add up over time. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. This sounds great. So we ended up buying it for $640,000. It only needed about 40 grand of rehab. So it wasn't, that big of a renovation at all, which is another beautiful thing about commercial because the tenants do their own work. So I raised 100% private money to acquire that asset. So it was a 16,000 square foot house and a single family house on a separate parcel right next to it. So we raised the money and bought it. And then we went in, cleaned it out, painted it, made it look pretty, put, $20,000-$30,000 into it. And then I started talking with brokers. I was like, hey, we got to get this leased out. What are your thoughts? Location, rent, et cetera. And they're like, how much do you think you can rent it for? I was like, 10-ish $1,000. They're like, yeah, I agree. I was like, perfect. Like, this is working out. Like, check box number one, right? And he was like, but what are the nets? I was like, what do you mean? What are the nets? He's like, yeah, the net expenses. I was like, I have no idea. And then I learned that, taxes, insurance, grass cutting, dumpster, trash removal, all that stuff, you add that back to rent. So it's called a triple net lease. So the $10,000 actually net to the owner, and then they pay the expenses on top of that. So instead of paying 10 grand a month, they're paying 12 or $13,000 a month because it includes all those expenses. And my, okay base hit, turned into like a triple. I was like, oh, this is crazy. This is amazing. So we posted it for lease. It did not get leased with the broker. 6 months, lesson learned. It's not. People handle things differently, but didn't get leased for a 6 month period. So we're burning, interest because I still got private money on this thing. And then after the 6 months, we took it and leased it. It took us about 60 days to lease the entire building between 3 tenants. A 3-year lease, a 5-year lease, and another 5-year lease, all triple net. And again, there's a house separate to this. But based on, kind of the cap rate in the area and stuff, appraisal is going to come back at like 1.4-ish. And we're into this thing for 660, 640, plus a little bit of rehab and plus, hold costs.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be all in like 770, 780.
Yeah.
It'll be worth about $1.4 million. And then the house is another $200,000 house that'll be free and clear because the warehouse will cover all the debt in and of itself. So it was kind of like, it was cool to realize what a triple net was. And it was very eye-opening because it's a whole different type of real estate investing.
Exactly. Yeah. Triple net lease deals, true triple net lease deals, because there's a lot of them out there that brokers put out, oh yeah, they're triple net lease. I'm like, look at the leases. Like, no, they're not triple net, but the true triple net ones are actually pretty easy to run the numbers, right? Just like, oh, what's the rent? That's your net operating income. That's awesome. So let's back up a little bit. So I always want to kind of like dive into how you found the deal. You found it through a buddy of yours. How did you meet that person? Because one of the primary deal channel flows is other investors. So kind of tell me, like, walk me through that, like what moved through the universe for that phone call to happen?
Yeah. So, I have a decent, following on social media. I got over 1 million followers on social. I don't think people truly understand the power of having a personal brand. So that has helped me get a ton of deals over the previous years. Majority, more than 70, 80% of our deal flow comes from other investors, wholesalers, essentially. So that's huge. So being able to have that brand on social media, when they call, kind of coaching them through, hey, this is why this isn't a deal. This is why this is a deal. You missed this over here. So, you're helping them, and then they feel inclined to obviously help you in return. So this is actually somebody I've known for, I don't know, three-ish years now, 4-ish years now. And we've talked about doing a deal together, never actually got around to it. And this was just a bigger one. So, when he got it, actually came through, what's it called? Receivership. So it was essentially foreclosure. The previous owners, they were terrible. They didn't even lease it. It was crazy. It was terrible. So he got under contract through receivership. I had to have a 10% hard money deposit within 7 days, which is $60,000. And then, that's one reason I got looped into the deal. And then the other reason is to raise the entire, money to purchase and renovate it. Then the third reason is to be able to sign on the debt on the back end. So, quote unquote, being bankable is very important, as you grow and get into bigger deals as well.
Now let's talk about the money. $600,000. There's not a lot of hard money lenders out there like mom and pops that would do something like that. So tell me about the debt stack on this deal. And the reason probably why you had to do that was because it was vacant. Like not a lot of banks wanted to touch that property. So tell me about that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And the timeline, to close it, I think it was less than 30 days for the closing. So it's hard to get a vacant property, financed through banks. So I just raised 100% private money. It's a single private money lender. It was $660,000 in the raise. And it's first lien position. We're just paying 12% interest. So it's just debt. There's no equity involved with it. And then when the house went vacant, because it came with a tenant inside of the house, and it took us a couple months to get the tenant out. So then when that happened, I raised $40,000 of private money from another individual to renovate the house. And those, so one lien is on the warehouse, the other $40,000 lien is on the house parcel. So it's 100% private money, 12% interest. The cool thing about it, all the interest gets kicked until the payoff. So I have no monthly interest payments. So it all accrues until the back end. So, on the refi, we'll be able to pay all that principal and all that interest off and not give up any equity doing it.
100%. Yeah. There's a lot of people that have the misconception out there that when they're raising private money that their investors want equity and that's not the case. And the thing is like, Ed, comes to be a point in time when you're doing like 20, $30 million deals where you're dealing with sophisticated investors that they want equity and they understand the business. I think that you can do your first 10 to $15 million in real estate deals with private money without ever having to do a syndication. And a lot of people out there that are thinking like, oh, I need to learn how to syndicate. I need to talk to an SEC attorney. I need to, get my PPM put together, my offering memorandum and my subscription agreement and what platform am I going to put this thing on to. And the thing is like people overthink that. And the reason why I want to pick on this deal is because it was smaller. It wasn't really enough to like be like, okay, it was small enough for like, let's say a private money lender, right? If this was like, let's say a $2 million deal, then you may have had to maybe piece it together from a few different lenders. Or sometimes, time just works with building relationships where I have a private money lender I can count on to write a $1.5 to $2 million check for deals that I need capital for. So where did that relationship come from?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The whole syndication thing, when everyone's talking about how much they own and all this stuff, but it's all syndication model. Like there's a time and a place for it, 100%. As the deals get bigger, but at the end of the day, equity is what creates wealth. So it's like, why give up all that equity when you don't have to? So I'm with you 100% on that. It's frustrating when I hear this stuff, but that relationship, he's lent me many, many, many millions. He's probably one of the better lenders that I have. But it actually came from a friend's uncle. So way back when I was in like high school, I went to his family reunion and met his uncle. And then, every year, I would kind of see him and, talk about real estate. And then I stopped going. And then he would just ask my best friend, hey, how's Austin doing? Oh, he's crushing it, blah, blah, blah. And then like 5, 6, 7 years into my real estate journey, finally, his uncle was like, yeah, like put us in contact. Let us catch up. Let us talk. And, jumped on the phone with him. And this is typically how private money works. Hey, he's like, hey, I got 50 grand. I was like, all right, cool. Like, we'll put the $50,000 in play. And then after that one, he's like, hey, I got 250 grand. I was like, bet. Did that deal. He's like, all right, now I got 500 grand. I was like, cool, let's do that one too. And he was like, hey, I got $1 million. I was like, done. Let's keep it rolling. And I still haven't found his cap. But, obviously there is one, but like that's how it kind of snowballs. A lot of people won't take smaller money, but that's how people get comfortable with you. So just been building that relationship over the years. He's referred me to some of his golfing buddies, which they have money as well. So it's been a great relationship to build over time.
Austin, do you golf?
I try.
That's the other thing too, is like people are like, oh, you need to have a country club membership in order to meet people that have that type of liquidity to participate in your deals. But I mean, I have a very similar story. That partner, lending partner that could write $1.5 million to $2 million check. I haven't tested the top of that yet either. I just haven't had to. But the first time I presented an opportunity to him, he was like, the most I give you is like $45,000. And I was
That's
like,
crazy.
and I almost passed on it. And then, but
Yeah.
that turned into, $400,000 and then $800,000. And then most recently $1.5 million. And now I'm just talked to him a couple of days ago. We got a redevelopment deal that we're working on where we're going to be redeveloping like an entire block of properties, converting from office to residential. And I was like, hey man, it's going to be about $2.5 million raise. This is going to be a deal that you're going to like. It's got all the tax benefits, blah, 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 blah. Like, how much of that would you be in for? So just so I know how much I have to canvas on this thing. And he's like, I might be in it for all of it. I'm like, okay. So, but it started from somewhere. If I would have shunned that $40,000 away, that would have never happened.
100%. 100%. And I mean, past that too, it's like, you don't know where those relationships are going to go, right? There's another $5.7 million deal where he came in a second lien position for almost $1 million. People would always say like, there's no way he's coming in second lien position for $1 million with no equity. Like if you're able to build those relationships, like that's all it is literally a relationship. I talk to literally everybody I meet about lending money because I genuinely feel like I'm doing them a disservice by not telling them.
Mm-hmm.
So you just got to talk to as many people as possible.
100%. So in regards to the actual lending versus equity, one of the things that I teach on with people that have the misconception around, oh, people want equity and that sort of thing. People want ownership, and equity and ownership are just fancy words for paid last.
Yeah, facts. I'm gonna start using that. That's good.
They sound great, right? But the thing is that, a loan, private money loan, whatever you want to call it, it is just another instrument of the actual capital stack. And it's the only thing that I can actually promise somebody. And I like to make promises. I don't like to make, oh, this is what we're projected or target returns, that sort of thing. Like, I don't, I wouldn't want to do that. If I was like, 50, 60 years old and I was in a kind of ending my accumulation phase and more into getting more income, driven in my career, I don't want to hear things like, yeah, target and all this stuff. I'm just like, just tell me what you're promising and you're going to pay me back. And I just think that people get psyched out when they think about those things. So cool. You brought this thing to the closing table. By the way, did you have to do any environmental due diligence on this building because it's a warehouse or what?
Yeah, we did. We got a phase one. The phase one actually came back the week after closing. So timing obviously wasn't ideal. There was an issue, and it's still ongoing. 77 years ago, there was like a tag for this tiny little thing of a filling station.
Mm-hmm.
We're still going through kind of the DD with that, but it hasn't messed up the deal. Which thankfully there weren't any like spills or logged issues on the environmental. But that's first time I had to do an environmental, so we're learning.
Yeah, that's the thing is we live in a Rust Belt city, Rochester, New York, and so the huge manufacturing town. And so one of the biggest environmental issues that we have with any building that has had some sort of industrial use is the use of chlorine solvents. And they're like, degreasers and that sort of thing. And a lot of people also navigating from that phase one to a phase two, because a lot of these people that own properties are they have their attorneys that are residential attorneys, right? Like they're trust and wills attorneys that are like, don't ever get a phase two because then they'll be they'll have to report it to the DEC, which is the agency in New York State. And they'll take your property and sue you and stuff like that. And it just like gets way blown out of proportion. And so that's one of the reasons why I want to have like direct contact with the actual owner itself. So, I mean, owner themselves. So instead of like it going telephone through a broker, through an attorney to the actual owner, I'm like, let's get on a conference call. Let's bring on an environmental consultant, an environmental attorney, which is good to have a relationship with an environmental attorney that has no problem hopping on a like half an hour conference call, explaining the implications of like, okay, yeah, you could go through, preemptively install an SSDS system, a subslab depressurization system, and you may never even have to get a phase 2, as long as the environmental consultant is good with it and your bank is good with it. And so, but that's cool. So you went through this thing. You're like, you hired a broker, and then you took over marketing the property. Am I wrong with that, or you hired another broker?
No, that's accurate. So it's like a C class property. So it's not like a, super, super nice type of property. So I'm sure it wasn't, on top of their to-do list every day. But, for me, it is. I'm burning, 15-ish thousand dollars a month holding this thing. So it's like I need to get it done. So yeah, they didn't have success leasing it for 6 months. And then we took it over. We went to our network. We kind of just talked about it to people, posted it in Facebook groups, posted it on Facebook Marketplace, posted it on Craigslist, and just got it out there to as many people as possible. And one came from a referral, and then the other two came from Facebook Marketplace. So again, not super A class type of properties. But it worked. We got a lease now, and they're paying, so that's a win.
Yeah, we have thing about Facebook Marketplace. I mean, if you got small spaces, that these brokers get a certain percentage of the total economic value of the lease they bring to the table. So if you got some tenant that's paying $2,000 a month on a 3-year deal, like that's not a lot to move the needle, right? So they're gonna post it on CoStar or LoopNet or Crexy and that sort of thing, and just wait for the phone to ring. And one thing is, like, we just hired a broker just several months ago, and we chose him by purpose because we had a lot of smaller spaces. It's like he's newer to the business. He's newer to commercial, not real estate, but commercial. And he's a younger guy, and we're like, part of this deal is you have to post on Facebook Marketplace because no other broker that we interviewed will do that. All right. And the reason why I did that is because one of my clients, Josh Rosenberg, he's actually been on this show before. He leased up 60 to 70,000 square feet in an industrial facility he bought last year just through utilizing Facebook Marketplace. So
That's crazy. That's wild.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when are you going to go to refi this thing after you get through the environmental issues, or what?
So they're kind of running simultaneously right now. So we started the refi process. They saw the phase 1. They're like, hey, we want a phase 2. So that's why we're in that process now. Mm-hmm. That's where we're at right now.
Excellent. Well, we're getting up towards the recorded end of the recorded version of the show. Austin, you and I talked to the same sort of like target audience with preaching commercial, and going bigger sooner than you think. What's your words of advice for those residential investors that are out there that feel like they're banging their head against the wall, chasing deals, being a deal junkie? I'm a recovering deal junkie. The medicine I found was commercial real estate. Chasing deals that are going to buy them incremental chump change over time. Because it took you 8 years, it took me 11 years, right? 11 years, 25 properties, 76 doors until I could become financially independent. What's your words of advice for them to be able to position themselves to bust through that ceiling?
At the end of the day, looking back, I passed on so many opportunities. I passed on an 8,000 square foot warehouse for $200,000 because I didn't think it was a deal, and it was in a phenomenal part of town. And like you just don't know what you don't know, right? It was one big massive open warehouse, and I underwrote it to chop it up into office spaces. Like just not knowing anything better. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like one, find the education, and I got to have the full education. Like just don't be completely ignorant. Like if it's a 1 to 10 education, like get to like 5 and you'll have at least enough to be dangerous. And then if you see an opportunity, you can pick up the phone, either wholesale it, make probably significantly more money than you've ever made in the residential space, or, maybe get a fee and a piece of the equity and the upside on the back end. So one is get educated. And the other reason when I look back on my journey, why I didn't do it, I was scared of bigger numbers. My, single family, $200,000 to, $600,000. I could raise the money, I could sell it. It's an easy deal. It was just simple. and, just fearful of like, raising more money, not knowing the triple net lease or whatever it is. So, I missed out on many, 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 many millions of dollars from being ignorant. So, and at the end of the day, like, it's literally the same. I use the same spreadsheet to analyze single family and commercial. It's just got more zeros on it. Like, that's the only difference. So, I highly encourage anybody, wanting to take that kind of leap. Um, you know, eh, last thing, and I'll stop. But so I was thinking back about 6 months ago, and I was like, all right, cool. Where am I at? Own 25-ish million dollars. And I was like, I want to get to $100 million portfolio that I own, right? And I was like, all right, how do I get there? I can do 250 single family houses, which is a lot, or I can do 10 or 15 commercial deals. I was like, that seems like a lot easier doing 10 or 15 commercial deals. And the cash flow is significantly better because it's a true triple net lease. So, got you to where you are isn't going to get you to where you want to go.
Absolutely. Austin, I forgot to ask you this question about the triple nets because we haven't talked about this a lot. So how much nets to charge on a price per square foot basis to the tenants on a building that you've had limited amount of ownership experience for to actually understand those budgets on the property?
Yeah, still learning it. Taxes and insurance are obviously, taxes and insurance. So then we hired a trash company, so we know that cost because they already bid it. We got estimates for snow removal and grass cutting. So I know how many times we'll have to cut the grass. I took a guess on snow removal, 3 to 5 times a year, just depending on how much you get. Utilities were sub-metered. So luckily we can bill those back. We don't even have to bill them back. They put them in their own name, which is obviously a blessing. And, obviously going to, learn what other expenses, come down the line. So we put, I think it was like a 5 or a 6% just addition, just for whatever else comes up. But those are kind of how we went through that.
Yeah, no, that's the one thing I've always struggled with when we take over a property that's vacant, and then like, oh, all right, how, because you don't ever know until you actually get your arms around the property, and you don't want to underbill them. Because then when you do CAM reconciliations at the beginning of the year, you're like slamming them with a huge bill. So I like to build in enough like buffer there where it's like, okay. And also just like talking to brokers too. Brokers are going to understand like, okay, for comparable type of properties, like what are the nets you're seeing out there? And just kind of like building off of that too. But yeah, no, it's definitely one of those things. Like residential multifamily is a bulk of our portfolio, and thankfully, we can keep expenses somewhat controlled. But I'm feeling for people that are in other markets that are just getting like hammered with insurance costs, and in Florida and Texas and that sort of thing. I mean, that basically just like takes a huge chunk out of the NOI, and like you can't recover that from your tenants, right? You got to eat it. But cool. Austin, what's the best way for our listeners to connect and learn more about you?
Yeah, I'm on all social medias. My most active one is Instagram. So at Austin Rutherford Official. I personally respond to all my DMs. So would love to connect with anybody out there. So definitely follow and message me on Instagram.
Excellent. Austin, thanks for being on the show, man. I'll look forward to catching you in the green room. For those of you listening right now, if you want to get in on the live Q&A with absolute beasts like Austin Rutherford, Gino Barbaro, Matt Faircloth, Ashley Kerr, Tyler Cobble. I mean, your toes must be hurting out here because I'm name dropping so much. You got to get on their live Q&A and our Facebook group. Just look us up, Go Big Live Real Estate Investors Group on Facebook. It's a closed group, so just extend an invite. I'll let you in to the group so you can get access to these episodes weeks in advance, and also get access to Q&A with Austin, guys like Austin, who are absolute titans of real estate out there. So again, thanks for being on the show, Austin. I appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it, brother.